guys, welcome to part 2 of my Pointe Q&A. So let's just get straight in with the rest of the questions. Why is it important to wear convertible tights with pointe shoes? It's actually not. It completely depends on like your kind of routine. I, for example, wear my toe pads outside of my tights, so I can just wear normal footed tights. Sometimes I even dance in footless tights if it's really hot. But there are some people who like to put their toe pads or like the different kind of things that they put around their toes, like tape and stuff, underneath their tights. Obviously, if you do like taping individual toes, that needs to be underneath your tights. So convertible just makes it easy if you've done a class in soft shoes and then you're moving on to pointe, then obviously you don't have to take your tights off, blah 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 blah. So it just makes it convenient if that's the case for you. Okay, what is the best way to prepare pointe shoes? So again, this is going to be very different for each dancer. Some dancers don't mind dancing in pointe shoes, which is still like quite rigid, but usually everybody does break them in a little bit. So for me personally, I don't take a hammer to my shoes or anything like that. I just bend the shank a little bit with my hands, and then I maybe like squeeze the box a little bit at the front just to get it a little bit flatter, because I find that the blocks come a little bit too rounded for my feet, so I just flatten the box a little bit, and then I just put them on and just start dancing. And the best way that I've found to break them in is just by wearing them and doing, you know, really basic, just rolling up through the feet super slowly, up and down, going through all of the demi pointe and then all the way back down. So that's what I do. But I know that some people do like kind of destroy their pointe shoes almost to the point of them being dead before they put them on, but that's not how I like to do it. I prefer to wear them and let them break in that way while they're on my feet. However, I do have the luxury of time. Like if you're someone that has to buy pointe shoes and be wearing them on stage like a couple of days later, then you may need to do much more of a breaking in process, but that's not my case. I can just wear them in class, and you know, I don't need to be on stage or feeling super comfortable the second I put them on. So it very much depends on what you need them for. Okay, what's the fastest way to get on pointe? What exercises do I need to do? Again, that's a really difficult one. What you need to do is pay a lot of attention in all of your normal ballet classes, apply all of the technique, listen to all the corrections, ask even your teacher about your alignment. That can really help. And as I said, practice balances on one leg. That will give you a good indication as well of like how your alignment is and how your balance is, which is going to help you to find your balance on pointe as well. But I would say, more than any specific exercises in ballet, one of the things that I think helped me get on pointe and then improve quite quickly once I went on pointe is thinking about my feet. I see sometimes in class, you know, people thinking a lot about pulling up, which is great, thinking about their turnout, which is great, but then you'll see like an arabesque and the foot is a little bit like limp at the end. It's so important to keep the tension and to keep the line all the way through the leg right to the end of the foot. Something else that I see, and I've seen myself do it in videos as well, especially when I'm doing pirouettes, is not going right up onto my full demi pointe when I'm on when I'm in soft shoes. So I'll like go up, of course, I'm not, you know, doing it on a flat foot, but I'll go up and I'll spin there. But it won't be 100%, it'll be like 90% of my full arch. That's not actually helping me, it's making my feet get a little bit lazy, and that's going to be something that's going to prevent me from getting onto the box as well. So it's really important that every time you go onto releve, you're pushing it to your fullest releve. You're going to your maximum height. Don't get lazy and leave it at 80 or 90%, because you're doing yourself a disservice and you're not going to build up the strength that you really need to get onto pointe. So that's what I would say. All the exercises are important, and there's no like one exercise I can say just do this 100 times and you'll be able to go on pointe. In your classes, think about your feet. Every time you tendu to the absolute maximum that you cannot physically point your foot anymore, and your knee is the straightest that it can possibly be. Every time you go up onto releve, go up 100%. Like you can't, your arch is physically the furthest pushed out that it can possibly be, and the most lifted it can possibly be as well. Again, if you have really amazing arches, then this is not really for you. In your case, you need to think much more about pulling up than pushing out the arch, but for everybody else, we can think about pushing the arch to the full maximum extent that we can. So it's really, I think, about focusing on your feet in class as well as everything else, which is obviously also super important, but that's just ballet. There's a lot to think about. Okay, how to get over your box in échappé to second. That's a tricky one because obviously you've got less of an angle when you're in second to actually get over the box. But again, it's just going to be strengthening your feet, working on your arch, and then also check that you're not opening your second too wide, because that will also make it harder to get over the box. Again, that's going to depend on which style of ballet you're dancing. Obviously, if you're doing Balanchine, then it's going to be a wider second. But if you're doing classical, then just check that you're not opening too much, because that will prevent you from being able to get like right over your box if your feet aren't that great yet. How can I balance without the bar? That is difficult on point, and it will take time. The best thing to do is to be at the bar, get into the position that you want to balance in, and really just tighten everything that you possibly can. Squeeze every muscle, squeeze your abs, make sure that you're in alignment, make sure that your weight is directly over your supporting leg, obviously, and then test your balance, and just keep doing those things. And every time you're going to come down, fight to stay up. Don't let yourself come down. Put your hand back on the bar, get back to your center, and then try again, try again, try again. That's it with balances. You just have to be committed to keep practicing and keep coming back to your center every time, and don't give up. But if you're really having trouble, then please do speak to your ballet teacher as well. Get them to look at your alignment, because it may be that something's way out and it's pulling you off balance. It may be that you're too far back. It may be that your head's too far forward. It may be that you're not on your supporting leg. It can be a number of different things. So if you're having consistent trouble with balances, then please ask your teacher to just have a look at you in a balanced position, and they'll be able to tell you what is the thing that's pulling you off your center. Okay, what's my favorite protectors? Silicone, or do you use something else? I've tried the silicone toe pads. I didn't like them because I felt like I couldn't feel the floor as well. So I used just normal like fabric toe pads. But every person is different, so please go and try different ones and see what works best for you, because what works best for someone else might not necessarily be the best thing for you. Okay, strengthening exercises to be able to go on one foot without the bar is to do strengthening exercises at the bar on one foot. I know that sounds like really obvious, but really, I mean, do lots of just plie relevé on one leg with your other foot in coup de pied, or whatever you want to do with the other foot. With plie and without plie, and without plie on one foot is really hard. So if you can do that and you can do a lot of repetitions, you're going to build up plenty of strength to then be able to later do it in the center. And obviously in the center as well, you're going to need to make sure that you have everything pulled up to the maximum and your abs are 100% engaged, because the more that you can pull up, the less weight you're going to have like on your foot. Okay, the next question is, I tend to curl my toes inside my pointe shoes. How can I correct that? So the way to correct that will be without your pointe shoes on. In your soft shoes, what you need to learn to be able to do is to isolate the muscles which work on the arch, but leaving the muscles of the toes relaxed. And I know that that can be really hard, especially when, if you've danced since you were little and what you were told is like point your toes, then you start to think about just your toes, when actually what you need to point is your foot, and then your toes will just follow the line. It's not about crunching in the toes as well. It's really just about pointing your foot, the arch of your foot, and then the toes will follow the line naturally. So if you can find a way to practice relaxing your toes but working the arch. And another thing maybe that would help would be point your foot and then flex your toes, and point your toes and flex your toes, just to find like the disconnect between the toe muscles and the arch muscles. That might help. And then really just try and do just the arch and leave your toes relaxed. Once you're in pointe shoes, obviously you don't want your toes to be relaxed. You'll want them to be strong as well, but you don't want them to be crunching up. So I think if you're able to do a few exercises and work on the isolation of the arch muscles, then when you're on pointe, you can focus much more on the arch. And also in class, when you're in your soft shoes, think about that as well. Think, don't crunch my toes. Like, even just have one class where you think at the bar, okay, today I'm not going to worry about lots of the other aspects of my technique. Obviously do as much as you can, but I'm going to focus on pointing my arch and not my toes, and just have like a focused practice of that for one day at the bar, and then try and internalize that, and then hopefully you'll be able to start to be able to isolate those muscles and to tell them what you want them to do, which is that you want them to be strong and pointed but not crunched up. But that will probably take just a little bit of time and thinking specifically about the arch more than the toes. How to get over the fear of doing point in the center, and they were talking about specific movements, but I'm going to talk in general because I think doing point in the center can be scary. So I'm gonna just talk about a few different things that you can make sure that you're doing to try and help yourself, and then the last step is just going to be really just believing in yourself. So the first thing you can do is to just see what's going on with the floor in your studio, because we have to be honest about this. We don't all have, you know, the professional linoleum floors that are ideal for dancing in point, and you know, it's great if you have those floors for any ballet class, but especially on point it helps so much because it's going to give you a little bit of friction, it's going to stop you from slipping a lot of the time. So if you have that, then great. If you don't have that, then I think it's really important to make sure that you have some rosin to use on your point shoes if you're dancing on a slippy wooden floor. If your ballet studio doesn't allow you to use rosin for whatever reasons on the wooden floor, then you can put a tiny bit of water just on the box and like around the box of your shoe. It's going to create just the tiniest little bit of friction, more than if there wasn't anything on there. That's like worst case scenario. Ideally you'll be dancing on linoleum. If you're not, then ideally you'll be allowed to use rosin because it's going to again help with a little bit of friction on the floor so you're not slipping as much. Worst case scenario, you can use a little bit of water if your studio doesn't allow you to use rosin. So that's the first thing. See what's going on with the floor situation, and this is also a reason why if you're dancing point at home, please don't go into the kitchen and dance on very slippy tiles. Like, it's dangerous. So be very mindful of that. That's the first thing. See what the floor situation is. The second thing is to make sure that you are strong at the bar before you go into the center. It's normal, I think, to be scared going into the center if you don't have the strength yet to be on point in the center. Of course that's going to be scary because you're not in control. So basically just avoid doing that. Avoid doing things in the center if you're not strong enough to do them yet and if your technique isn't good enough. And obviously your teacher, hopefully, will be able to recognize that and won't push you, you know, too quickly into the center if you're not ready. However, there is going to be a moment when your teacher is going to ask you to do a single pirouette in the center and you've never done it before, and you're just going to have to confront the fear. So having said that, you've got the floor, you've got your strength, you've got your technique, now you're in the center and you're doing something scary. The worst thing you can do on point, in my opinion, is to not fully go for it. I feel like there's more chance that you're going to injure yourself or make a mistake or fall over or whatever, slip, if you don't fully commit to the movement. Say it's a pirouette, for example. If you fully commit, if you straighten your standing leg, if you push into the floor and you pull up at the same time and you get onto your box, you are much more likely to complete the pirouette than if you are just trying to do it in a safer way that you feel more comfortable. You're not straightening your leg, you're not getting fully up on point, you're being hesitant about it. It's actually more likely, I think, that something might go wrong if you do that. So that being said, I know it's scary, but if you are in the center, if you're strong, if your teacher thinks you should be there and be doing it, then believe in yourself and just go for it. It doesn't matter if you fall over. I've fallen over on my bum doing a pirouette from 5th position on point in front of the whole of my conservatoire class. It doesn't matter, these things happen. It's happened to the best of us. If you go on YouTube, there's also videos of the professionals falling over on stage. You know, it happens. Don't worry. That's the worst thing that can happen if you commit to the movement. The worst thing that can happen, the most likely thing that will happen 99.999% of the time, is that you'll do it. And then that 0.00001% when something happens is you'll fall over, but your body will be aware enough and alert enough so that you fall hopefully in a way that's not going to hurt you. That's usually what happens. The other way of doing it, if you're like holding back and you're not giving 100%, is that you probably won't do the movement properly anyway, and you're probably more likely to slip over, and because your body wasn't, you know, properly tense and in the proper position, you might be more likely to hurt yourself in a different way. So get over the fear of falling over. It doesn't matter, and the big likelihood is that you're gonna do it. Or, for example, you're going to get halfway around, realise that you're not on your centre and just come down. One of the biggest things that's going to help you with all of these things, everything to do with point and feeling secure on point and being in control on point, is to be able to roll down through your point shoe. If you can roll down through your point shoe, it's so much safer to do any movement, because if you're up on point, say you're in a décidé and you're on point, if something goes wrong and you come off your centre or whatever, if you can quickly just roll down your point shoe before this foot is even able to reach the ground, then you've saved yourself, basically. Whereas if you have no strength and the only thing you can do on point is to basically just like fall off it, then obviously that's going to be much more dangerous. So think about rolling down through your point shoes every single time that you're coming off point. So be thinking about that from the bar as well. Be thinking about rolling down through the point shoe. I think in point we tend to focus on getting up onto point, but it is just as important how you come down from point as how you get up on point. Okay, if I practice point only once a month and I am a beginner, will this get me any better? Obviously, some point is better than no point. However, I would say ideally that once you start point, you would really need to be doing once a week. It's just because of the nature of our biological bodies. We need to be doing things a little bit more regularly than once a month if we want the muscle memory to build up, if we want the muscles to stay strong. So I would say minimum once a week if you can. Obviously if you can't, then once a month is still better than not at all, but if you can do once a week, then you will definitely see quicker improvements. Okay, when starting point as an adult, did you take private lessons or did you find a beginner's class? I went to a beginner's class. I've actually, in my whole lifetime, I think done 2 private classes in my whole life. So yeah, everything was in group classes, but I was lucky to have, you know, really good teachers, and obviously at the conservatoire I had amazing teaching and training. So more important is finding a really good teacher. It's better to have a really good teacher in a group class than have a not great teacher and do privates. If you can afford to have a great teacher and do private classes, then perfect. That's really going to help you to improve quickly, but it's not, you know, I'm going to say it's not necessary. It's a great thing if you can afford it, but for those people who can't afford it, please don't worry, you can still improve very much in group classes with a good teacher. Okay, what characterizes the different brands of point shoes? So that is something that could be a whole video on its own, and actually I'm not an expert in this because, as I said in the other video, I have actually only worn 4 different brands of point shoes, and there are many more out there. So if you're really interested in knowing the difference between different point shoes and things like that, you can go and look at Ali on Pointe's Instagram, and she also has a YouTube channel, and she has tried out a lot of different point shoes, so you can go and like actually compare them side by side and see what they look like. So maybe that would be a better place for you to try and find some answers in terms of what's the difference between different point shoes. I break my shoes way too low in the metatarsal area. How can I fix this? So the first thing that comes to mind is get a higher vamp. Get a point shoe with a higher vamp. So the vamp is the part of the point shoe that's at the front, and you can have like a lower vamp that comes lower on the toes, or you can have a higher vamp. And obviously if you have it higher, then it's going to prevent you from being able to break too low down. For example, the point shoes that I wear have quite a high vamp, but I know that Gain and Minden, for example, do a lot with a lower vamp. But I think if you get the ones with the lower vamp, you really have to have, first of all, a good arch, because otherwise the temptation is, like, instead of to break here, that you break too low down. So that would be my number one thing. Get a higher vamp, definitely. And the other thing would be kind of what we talked about before in terms of making sure that when you're pointing your foot, it's coming from the arch and not from the toes, and just making sure that you're working on the strength of your arch. so that it's that's getting you up and not this that's getting you up. It's coming from higher up on your foot. Okay, so the last question is, could you talk about weight placement with pointe shoes? How should it feel when done right? There's a lot of different things to think about on pointe, and that is one of the reasons why I made the video Beautiful Ballet Feet, the pointe edition one, and I go into actually a lot of detail on where your weight placement should be in the pointe shoe from the front and from the side. So definitely go and check that video out and put those things in practice. So guys, I really hope this video was helpful. Again, thank you so much to anyone who sent in a question. As always, you can leave me any questions in the comments and I'll get back to you. My pointe playlist will be linked in the description box, so definitely go and check that out. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!